Sorry.
It is 1962, and Hattie Mae has just been released by her slave owner, Good Master, as she called him. She was free to go years prior. However, she stayed with Good Master years after because she had nowhere else to go. She birthed 6 kids. All her kids were sold into slavery by Good Master. No husband, no children, no family. Hattie Mae had to find a new home. You see, Good Master was getting old, no longer could do for himself. So his kids came to get him and put the plantation up for sale. As the for sale sign was nailed in the ground, Hattie Mae was left alone in New Hope, Virginia, with no home of her own. As she bowed the cold February air, she found a local church. She met a few saints who just fell in love with Hattie Mae. Through the church, she found a family in Charleston, South Carolina, who was willing to take her in and care for her as their own mother. The Lovett family did not have much, but had a heart of love, and the father always wanted the grandmother for the kids to learn from. So he was happy that Hattie Mae had agreed to come stay with them.
Hey, Hattie Mae.
All right.
Tell us about your time on the plantation. Yes, she was sweet. Is this our grandmother? How old is she?
Children, settle down. Let's get Miss Hattie Mae get settled. Each night, Hattie Mae would gather the kids around her lap and tell them stories about her time on the plantation, Harriet Tubman, and other friends she met while working in the cotton fields. One night, she told them the story about her oldest son, Edwin.
He was a sweet little boy, always stayed under me, working as hard as me at a very young age. I think this is why Good Master sent him with his son. You see, Good Master's son got married in 1897, when I was about 23 years old. My son Edwin was about 5 years old at that time, and Good Master just came and took him in the middle of the day. I did not know what was going on, and he told me he was going with his son. When he did not come back that night, it just broke my heart. And I cried and I cried, and I hated Good Master for taking my son. But I had to continue on and to be strong for my other babies. You see, I had Betsy Mae and Sadie, and I prayed to God, asking him not to give me any more boys, because I knew Good Master was just going to take them away. As years passed by, I had Cecilia and Hallery and finally Phoebe, and I could never forget about my good son, Edwin.
Lord God.
Children, it's time for bed.
All right, children.
As Hattie Mae went to bed, she wrote a letter. She had been holding a secret and just had to get it out. Over several months, Hattie Mae told the kids many stories. From singing songs in the cotton field to learning to read and write in secret, she told the kids, "Yep, I know how to read and write. I learned how when I was a girl, and it was a great benefit to me while I worked on the plantations. That is why I believe I was kept around so long." It is August 28, 1963. Millions of people came to Washington, D.C. for the March on Washington.
Kids, come on in here and let's watch the March on Washington.
Okay. Yeah.
I am happy to join with you today
All right.
in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
Amen.
50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic symbol we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation.
Well,
This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who
Yeah.
had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity.
Yeah.
But 100 years later,
100 years later.
the Negro still is not free.
Jesus.
100 years later,
Well,
the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination.
come on.
100 years later,
100 years.
the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity.
Yeah.
100 years later, the Negro is still languishing in the corners of American society
Oh,
and finds himself in exile in his own land.
yes, sir.
So we have come here today to dramatize a shameful condition.
Okay.
In a sense, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check.
Cash that check, yes, sir.
When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note
Uh-huh.
in which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note
No good.
insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check.
Oh, yeah.
A check which has come back marked insufficient funds.
Yeah.
But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt.
Come on.
We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation.
Yeah.
So we have come to cash this check.
Oh, we're coming to cash it now.
A check that will give us, upon demand, the riches of freedom and the security of justice.
Yeah.
We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now.
Okay.
This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy.
Yes.
Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time
Now is the time.
to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time
Now is the time.
to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment.
Yes. Yes.
This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality.
All right.
1963 is not an end, but a beginning.
Yes.
Those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content with will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwind of revolts will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of injustice.
All right.
In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds.
Okay. Come on.
Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom
Ah.
by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred.
That's it.
We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline.
Sure enough. No.
We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people.
All right.
For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny.
All right. Come on. Yes.
They have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom.
Yes, sir.
We cannot walk alone.
Come on.
As we walk, we must make the pledge, and we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back.
Can't turn back.
There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied?
When?
We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is a victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a small ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote. The Negro in New York believes he had nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied. We will be not satisfied until justice rolls down like waters, righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Many of you have come from fresh, narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom have left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow the situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. There's a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even in the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, by the color of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with this vicious racist, with this governor having his lips dripping with the words of imposition and nullification. One day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls We'll be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
Yeah.
I have a dream. And one day, every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain. Crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed. And all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope.
Yes.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with a new meaning. My country, till thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the predacious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the Curvatious slopes of California. Not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we let freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we'll be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forward to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forward to carry me home. Sweet Lord, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Sweet Lord, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Hattie Mae died shortly after the speech. When in her pocket, Edie finds a note.
Dear son, ever since I stepped in your home, I knew it was you, my dear Edwin. It brought joy to my heart to look into your eyes again. I don't know why God brought us back together after all these years, but I'm so glad He did. It is good to see that you are all right and was able to establish a family of your own. As a boy, you looked just like your son. I knew for certain when when I saw a half of a horseshoe scar on your arm. That happened when you were only about 2 years old, when you wandered into the barn of the plantation and fell on a horseshoe iron, or so I was told.
You have grown up to be a handsome, God-fearing man of God. Continue to raise your kids up in the Lord and share all these stories with them so they can know where they came from. I feel so blessed that I got to share many of these stories already with you and your kids. You have family. I encourage you to look for your sisters, Betsy Mae and Sadie, Cecilia, Hallery, and finally Phoebe. They were all sent to plantations around the Virginia area. They all could read and write, so this made them a great asset to many plantations. I appreciate our time together. Love, your dear mother, Hattie Mae Ingram.
Praise the Lord. Let's give the kids a round of applause.